Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer Christmas Connection flight. Randy and Jeremy both extend to you a very Merry Christmas. We've taxied to the departure lane and will be taking off shortly. I'm coming back with a round of eggnog. Sit back and relax as we fly the same path as Santa, bringing enlightenment and joy to all. Thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. This is your captain speaking, and I would like to take this opportunity to personally welcome you to our state-of-the-art radio program. We know you have a choice when it comes to your radio listening pleasure, and would like to thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer. What's more, we're confident that no other radio program or venue will fly you over the friendly airwaves in as much comfort and style, nor leave you with an indelible yet pure sense of enlightenment, quite like we can here at the Wright Flyer. Now that you're aboard, please be seated, fasten your seatbelts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show. We've taxied to the departure lane and are awaiting takeoff clearance from air traffic control. While they go through that mindless, bureaucratic red tape and regimentation, my first officer, Jeremy Graventon, and I shall delve into the pre-flight checklist because there is a lot of news and information to get to before we may indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. You know, according to David Crary with the Associated Press, the swelling power of ISIS has been voted the top story of 2015. Folks, this is understandable. During the 2012 presidential election, Barack Hussein Obama repeatedly thumped his chest and claimed that al-Qaeda was on the retreat. He misled the American public, claiming that his foreign policy had helped make the country safer, when in fact nothing could be further from the truth. Is it any wonder, then, that his approval ratings are in the tank? You know, I've heard numerous political hack pundits on the left attempt to spin his dismal foreign policy record as being up to a communications failure. Can you believe that? A communications failure. They think the only reason that people are disconcerted right now is because the cable news media has been focusing too much attention on this issue, and that, in fact, Obamulux has been working tirelessly to secure the country. What a load of hogwash. Give me an ever-loving break. This doesn't come down to a communications failure. It comes down to a foreign policy failure. Hell, it comes down to just a failure of this administration, which we can't even call an administration. It's a failed regime. Absolutely a failed regime. People aren't concerned because Obama hasn't sold his policy with a gold ribbon on it. They're concerned because there are savage barbarians who have unleashed attacks upon this country. People are upset because Obama has been releasing Gitmo detainees in reckless fashion. And one of the top al-Qaeda rats has become king rat of the most powerful and active branch of that Islamo-fascist organization. When the president is devoted to strengthening our enemies abroad and leaving our borders unprotected at home, this is the direct consequence. It represents a staggering lapse in leadership, and clearly the president is intentionally targeting our fundamental and unalienable right to keep and bear firearms instead of fighting the real danger of Islamofascism. Obama runs out and claims that we cannot let it be a new norm, that we have unprecedented gun violence in this country right after an Islamo-fascist terrorist attack in San Bernardino, California. Again, the president stuck his fingers in his ears and ignores the American people and the plight they face. He proactively seeks to weaken them as our true enemies gather strength. Time and again, the president has proven the United States. What's more, that trio of maggots seeking the Democrat Party nomination for the office of President of the United States are just as bad as King Obama, if not worse.
Well, this is the way I look at this, Randy. He's establishing plausible deniability. He's focusing on this whole foreign policy or lack thereof when he's not even giving any adherence to domestic policy. We had what, the attacks at Fort Hood, we had the attacks on the Military Career Service Center in Tennessee this year, San Bernardino, this Vegas attack where apparently the woman driver who's been arrested and is actually being charged with murder, according to releases and media, that while she was driving onto that Vegas strip into a crowd of people, she yelled Allahu Akbar. Now,
And she was living in that car with her kid, apparently.
sure, so this is all establishing plausible deniability. He could say, well, we've tried to contain ISIS over there, and yeah, sure, some of them have leaked out and came here, but that's not our fault. It's because of this, and this. He'll make up.
Yeah, it's the fault of the Easter Bunny.
Sure, absolutely, and that's the whole premise of this, and it's very disturbing. It's one of those, watch this hand over here while this hand is doing something different. It's all smoke and mirrors, sleight of hand crap, and the American people really, many of them are waking up to this, but
Yeah.
it's trying to be suppressed by the media, and this regime is what's going on. I won't even call them a legitimate administration. Absolutely
And that's perfectly right, because the way they're acting, they're not an administration, they are a frickin' regime.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And when this continues to happen, and it goes on, and it's going to continue to happen, I've got a real sinking feeling in my gut that it's going to get a lot worse than this prior to the 2016 elections.
Well, I wouldn't put it past King Obama to try and use any type of social disturbance to attempt to implement martial law in order to then go and suspend the elections so that he becomes, the true tin-pot dictator of the United States of America.
Well, hey, let's not forget, never let a good crisis go to waste.
And, how can we forget that earlier this year he had actually come out and said that he would be great for a third term, that he could win a third term? That's not the idle prattle that you hear from legitimate presidents or presidential candidates.
Well, that is one of the reasons that reinforces the need for the 22nd Amendment.
Absolutely.
That came about after FDR, or because of FDR.
Yeah, absolutely, because of FDR.
FDR
had 3 terms and was going for a 4th if he could have lived.
Sure, and that's a problem. And a lot of people would say, well, I think Obama would make a great president again for a third term. These people that say these things, and the people that actually think it would be valid to even espouse such a thing, have no understanding of the Constitution, how it's written, what it's for. They just want to cast it aside because they believe it's antiquated. It doesn't mean what it does today that it did 233 years ago. Well, you know what? Guess what? It has not been changed for the worse. It has never been revoked or repealed or dissolved. Therefore, it is still the supreme law of the land, and it must be adhered to, no matter the consequences.
And it's the longest contiguous running constitutional document in the history of mankind. And I know that we've repeated that on many of our past episodes, but it bears repeating because it goes to show that our founding fathers were so ahead of their time and that they had such great foresight that they understood that a natural law system would be timeless in nature, and therefore it could never become antiquated. It could never become tired, trite, or contrite the way that these utopian socialists are trying to paint it out. And all they're trying to do is literally attack everything that is great about the United States of America. They really are a despicable type of people.
Well, and I'll tell our listeners right now what is antiquated. Islam, communism, Islam, socialism, those things are antiquated because they have been around for so long that they don't mean or they don't operate the way they were since their inception. The Constitution has been a solid, unbroken force since its inception and since its ratification. Communism has been modified. Socialism has been modified.
Well,
Islam,
and it's always failed.
And it's always failed. That's why they're always modifying it, because every time it fails, let's try it this way. Let's try it this way. The United States Constitution, albeit it does have the means of being changed through the ratification process.
Yeah, but that's arduous and done so on purpose.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it's, they want to talk about things being antiquated. Let's use their own terminology again. And see, this is the thing. With the declaration of war that we made last night against political correctness, this is just one of our many, many weapons in our arsenal of combating political correctness. We're going to use their terminology against them. Antiquated being the Constitution, they say? Wrong. Their mode of thinking is antiquated. Their ideologies are antiquated. They don't work anymore. They're insufficient. They lack substance.
And they're offensive.
And not only are they offensive, but it goes beyond that.
It's bigoted.
Sure. Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, gosh. But in a related story, since we are just days away from celebrating the Christmas holiday, there's a report out claiming that firearms have topped the Christmas shopping list. Scott Stump, oh God, Jeremy, I did not make this name up. I wish I had. Scott Stump, with the Today News, published a piece which mentions that the convergence of fears over terrorism and a perceived threat of gun laws being changed have sent gun sales skyrocketing throughout the country. He claimed that even though this is already one of the busiest months for firearm purchases, it is greatly extenuated this year due to these converging concerns. I have to take issue, though, with the language he used to frame the first part of his article. This isn't a perceived threat of changing gun laws. After every senseless act that has occurred this year, Obama has redoubled his threat to use his pen and phone to subvert the Constitution. That's a very real threat. Well, when it comes to subverting the constitutionally protected rights of the citizen, Obama doesn't mince words. He always goes for the jugular, so to speak. Thus, how can anyone blame gun owners for being concerned?
I don't even think it's just, a fear of gun laws changing or people being concerned about it. I think citizens in this country are finally waking up and realizing that the whole auspice of the Second Amendment is to prevent exactly what we have. The media, people like Mr. Stump, we're going to have fun with this.
Oh, yeah. Stumpy has some issues.
Sure. It just, not quite that tall yet. But the thing is, when articles like this come out, they want to feed on that fear. They want to kind of stoke the fire, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And they leave out the plausible and absolute indignation that people are fed up. They're tired of their Constitution being stripped from them. They are tired of a tyrannical regime, making these veiled threats in some cases, or absolute threats and right-in-your-face threats in others, that they've had enough. They have to understand this is the problem with the media. They're always one-sided. There's no such thing as fair and balanced journalism anymore. Not even Fox News is fair and balanced. Some of the
No,
commentators on
especially
there,
not with that Megyn Kelly hack.
or
Chris Wallace,
Sheepherder Smith, or whatever his name is, they're lopsided towards, well, they're pushing this Republican candidate. Well, why not look at all the candidates and say, you know what, this particular candidate, Ted Cruz, actually understands the Constitution and knows it better than any other candidate that's on stage.
right?
Period.
Absolutely.
If they want to be one-sided and lopsided, why not go full tilt to the way it should be and pressure people, so to speak, because they're always pressuring people. They're always trying to influence them. That's the problem I have with media. They become more of an influential entity rather than a straight down the middle,
they're not objective.
No, the truth is the truth because the truth has no agenda. They have an ulterior motive and agenda with this.
Absolutely.
And I find that to be offensive.
Oh, yeah. It absolutely is. And, this is just kind of par for the course. I mean, again, this clearly demonstrates how the president, along with his lapdog media, is assuming a position which is diametrically opposed to the will of the people. Instead of following the good leadership sense of patriotic people, like the police chief of Detroit, Michigan, the president and the salivating Main Street media seeks to weaken the people. When there is an enemy more determined than ever to slaughter countless American citizens, everywhere we turn, all we see is an administration more interested in protecting the feelings of Muslims instead of encouraging the American people to be safe. Everything seems upside down. So while Obama says that we can't have a new normal of gun violence, he expects us to accept a new normal of a less safe country and a new normal of just bowing down and capitulating to these Islamo-fascists. Well, since when has that ever been an acceptable position for the American people to assume? It's totally unacceptable.
Well, and I've made mention of this before. We are the United States of America. We are the big dog on the block. We bow to no one. When we have a tin pot dictator going overseas to other countries and bowing to the King of Saudi Arabia, bowing to whoever, I mean, it seems so bad. I wouldn't even be surprised if he hasn't already, bowing to Kim Jong-un. That
Probably
little
done it
sawed-off,
on
that little stumpy potentate. I don't get it. And people accept that as if it's some kind of normalcy. And he says, well, going back to this whole thing of, well, we can't allow this gun violence to become the new norm or normalcy in the United States. Hey, wake up, Adolf Obama. It has been a normal thing in the United States since, I don't know, at least 1993, when the same radical jihadists tried to take down the World Trade Centers the first time.
Yeah, but you see, he tries to make this erroneous jump in logic to say that it's the right to keep and bear firearms that empowers terrorists. What? Where did he pull that rabbit from? Which orifice? Actually,
Bernie Sanders.
I don't know.
Bernie Sanders.
Ah.
He got it from Bernie
He's an
Sanders.
orifice all unto himself.
Sure. Walking colostomy bag.
Oh, gosh. But, folks, you are wise to be purchasing firearms and ammunition. The holidays must remain festive, but we must also be on guard against increased threats. In this day and age, when our federal government refuses to secure our border and the détente wing of the gutless opposition party actively collaborates with the radical and extreme left, it is more important than ever to keep ourselves safe. This merely speaks to common sense. If we do not take our own protection into our own hands, more Americans will be exposed to senseless risk. To call Obama's actions a hideous breach of our shared Constitution would be a gross understatement. It's to the point now that every position he assumes can automatically be labeled as against the well-being of the American people. How tragic it is that we find ourselves in such a position. Yet, nevertheless, this is the stark reality that we face as a people and a nation.
You know, and the whole thing is, again, we've mentioned this numerous times, and it's worth mentioning again. And just as a heads up, we're going to mention this in future shows as well. Your first responsibility as an American citizen, it is your responsibility to protect yourselves. It's not the government's job. It's not the state's job. It's not the law enforcement's job. It is you.
It's not even your fellow citizens' job, if you come to think about it.
Correct. It is your sole responsibility and obligation. Because, again, under our shared Constitution, individually, this is where individualism really digs its heels in and says, I'm not going to budge. Because it is our shared Constitution, each one of us have an individual obligation and responsibility to protect our rights. It's not Randy's job to protect your rights, or nor mine. Now, would we do it at the drop of a hat? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's the charity that we spoke about on our Christmas special.
Sure. And that's what it is. And that's the camaraderie. That is one of the binding ties of individualism and the whole makeup of what the sense of we the people are.
Mm-hmm. And you know, Jeremy, there are plenty of signs that the way this country is being run today is leading to an uptick in animosity and uncertainty by the people. Whenever the leadership of the nation plays stupid left-wing games, violence has an upswing. According to the New York CBS affiliate, a man and a woman assaulted a blind Salvation Army bell ringer at a White Plains restaurant. This happened at approximately 3 p.m. Saturday at a, and again, Jeremy, I cannot make up these names, Smash Burger. I mean, really? Smash Burger? Wow. Anyway, at this Smash Burger, we see that there was another type of smashing that went down because the 41-year-old bell ringer, who is legally blind, yes, that's right, legally blind, was taking a break and standing in line with the two deviants. The deviant, and wait for this, tell me if you can figure out whether this guy might be linked to illegal alien status, Juan Rodriguez, who is 30 years old, and Adriana Wingal, who is 21 years old, accused the bell ringer of cutting in line. Rodriguez then proceeded to punch the victim, knocking the poor man to the ground. The deviant then straddled the victim and hit him repeatedly on the head, while his partner in crime kicked him while he was down. Rodriguez then went over to the Salvation Army kettle, picked it up, and flung it at the man, striking him again in the head. What sort of person does something like this? The man is blind, for Pete's sake. Morality and common decency have fallen by the wayside in this country. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if Rodriguez is an illegal alien. I mean, illegal aliens don't respect the law. They don't respect human decency. And they act like thugs. I hope these two social deviants have the book thrown at them and that they get locked up for a long time. This sort of behavior is incorrigible.
Well, this begs the question, Randy, and I'll make my point with this, kind of, jumping into it. Maybe the motive or the reason why Rodriguez did this was he was already unhinged prior to getting in line.Maybe he passed, I don't know, maybe a public nativity scene, became enraged about it, and then decided to take out his anger in that blind individual, that bell ringer for the Salvation Army, that soldier of charity,
Yeah. Charity
cutting,
again, folks.
cutting in line, just really, I mean, that was it. That was the breaking point. That is what, that's the straw that broke the camel's back there, folks. And that, see, people they want to talk about intolerance and they want to talk about being offended. You want something to be offended about?
Be offended about that.
Be offended about this.
Absolutely be offended about that.
You want to talk about being offended because of, well, the song White Christmas is racist.
We're coming up to that one, too.
Yes, we are. That's why I'm saying, we're kind of jumping into this. But the thing is, it seems like everybody is so twisted in the head that they have no sense of reality anymore.
No, absolutely not. And we certainly don't see a moral code anymore.
No.
Jeremy, I bet it is safe to say that when we were growing up, if someone did that to a Salvation Army bell ringer, particularly a blind one, they'd have the ever-living excrement beaten out of them.
Sure.
Because
Absolutely.
We were raised differently. Our parents ingrained a sense of respect, honor, and integrity within us. Obviously, these social deviants need remedial instructions on what it means to be a human being, or how to be upstanding citizens. Or maybe they just need to have, precursory instructions on how to stick a gun in their mouth and end it all. Because they're not the sort of people we want in this country.
Well, and the thing is, if I would have done something like that growing up, even now,
yeah,
I'm going to tell you, even now, if I was to engage in an activity of assaulting a disabled individual who is doing nothing more than exercising and engaging in charitable actions, my father would literally drive to my house or find me. If I was arrested and in jail, he would make his way there and he would proceed to stomp a water hole in me. And then I would go through the consequences, through the legal ramifications. And when that's all said and done, he would come and pick me up and take me to that individual if it wasn't done in court, because I would
force you to apologize.
Force me to publicly apologize to him. See, here's the problem. People don't understand what humiliation is anymore. They don't know what it means to be made humble. They want to be offended by this and offended by that. You know what? I'm offended that they even exist, because they're the type of individuals that are perpetuating the moral decay of this country.
Yeah.
Individuals are going to be around for my kids and my grandkids and my great-grandkids to observe in society. I don't want them around that.
No, absolutely not. And, it speaks to a greater pattern of misconduct in this country. The way that the political bigwigs ignore the law has created a sense of lawlessness in this country. They are responsible, at least in part, for this sort of lunacy. Once again, the people need to return to a sense of self-respect and accountability to help combat this undeniable social decay which plagues our country. And, of course, the way we have to do this is we have to be willing to stand up and take pride in what it is we do. And if we take pride in what it is we do, we don't tolerate what these little deviants do, because that's not socially acceptable behavior. But have you noticed that society doesn't chastise anybody anymore, because nothing is sacred anymore? We don't hold the institution of marriage, the traditional institution of marriage, with the same type of reverence we used to. That's why we allow same-sex marriage. And now you have all of these people, straight from the polygamist groups to the bestiality groups, that want to be able to marry. I mean, where does it all stop?
Well, and here's the other thing. Again, they preach, this intolerance drivel. Well, you're intolerant to this. No, I'm intolerant to people behaving in an immoral fashion. That's where my intolerance is. But they have their heads twisted on backwards, upside down, and inside out, to where they don't understand what true intolerance is. Mm-hmm. These are the types of individuals, and Nelson, our first Air Marshal, has mentioned this time and time again, These types of individuals, they always want to cry, well, I have the right to this. They think they can make up their rights. They think that their rights are whatever they say they are. Wrong. Your rights are enumerated in our shared Constitution. Anything outside of that is not a right.
And I'm going to take it a step further, Jeremy. I'm going to take it a step further. If you are unwilling to exercise the duties and responsibilities that coincide with our fundamental and unalienable rights, you don't have your fundamental and unalienable rights either, because that was part of the expectation that the Founding Fathers had, was that we would be proactive in fulfilling those duties and obligations that are couched with our fundamental and unalienable rights. And if you fail to do that, then you don't have any rights, because you haven't earned the right.
Well, here's a suggestion for these individuals that think that they could just make up their rights as they go along. Why don't you go to a luggage store, buy some luggage, pack up all of your stuff, and move to Cuba?
Right.
Or wherever else. Because it's coming down to it, and again, this is just another aspect of my war on political correctness, our war on political correctness. We don't want you here. We do not want you poisoning the sanctity of what our country stands for.
We're tired of you tearing this society apart at the seams. We're tired of you spitting on everything that is near and dear to us about this country and about these people. We're tired of you making it seem as though it is something to be ashamed of to come out and loudly proclaim that you're an American citizen. Enough is enough.
And if you don't want to take that suggestion, the only other alternative you have is to shape up.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't abide by the Constitution, if you cannot abide by the moral fabric of what this country was sown in, then make yourself scarce. I don't want to see you. I don't want to hear you. And when I do see you or hear you, I'm going to tell you right now, you might as well gear up and bring a lunch, because I'm going to be hungry.
Yeah, because we have to stand up for what is good and decent about our society. We can no longer be complacent. We can no longer abide by the Confucius principle of live and let live. They're not letting us live. They are consistently cornering us, consistently jabbing us. And, I think it was, a couple of years ago that Obama actually went out, and I don't know if he knew whether his mic was hot or not, but he was telling people to get up into the opposition's face, to not let them be. That is the sort of disrespect that just makes my blood boil. And it shows that these people are out to be rabble-rousers. They are nothing more than utopian socialist stormtroopers, no different than the Nazis. Absolutely no different than the brown shirts that run around terrorizing Jews and all of the other so-called undesirables to the Nazis, and therefore they need to be dealt with in the same fashion that we dealt with the National Socialist German Workers' Party. They need to be wiped off the face of the earth.
Absolutely.
And then, since we're on this topic of political correctness and its assault on society, Dan Joseph with MRC-TV has published a piece about college students signing a petition to ban the song White Christmas from the radio because it is supposedly racist. Look, folks, snow is white. It has always been white. Maybe these demented students would prefer yellow snow, but I, for one, wouldn't. What this story demonstrates is that these college students, and they're not even students, these college wimps, are being taught bigotry. That's all there is to it. Who else runs around trying to think up of ways to be offended? The indoctrinators have even coined a new phrase to describe this sort of offense. Are you ready for this, Jeremy? I think you're going to just not want to hear this, but here it comes. They claim that the Irving Berlin piece, made famous by Bing Crosby, represents a micro form of aggression. Microaggression. A song about dreaming of being home during the Second World War when people that were these college students' age were fighting to the death is microaggression? Then what in the hell would you call this outlandish behavior by these perpetually offended thugs? It ain't what I'd call peaceful or decent.
Microaggression. Now, that's another term that we can have fun with. We can have so much fun with this. Well, let's see. Would donning rubberized phallic symbols be considered as microaggression?
Absolutely.
I think it would. I think it would. Because, like we mentioned before, with the individual Jessica Jin saying that, well, we're going to protest open carry and concealed carry on college campuses in the state of Texas, and we're going to do it by wielding our own phallic symbols and this and that.
Somehow is effective.
Sure.
As having a firearm to defend yourself.
And
Jin, you can't easily cock around into a phallus. Sorry. Different meaning of the word cock.
Of course. Now, here's the thing. As I mentioned before, I could see this being the catalyst to where you're going to have more college campus rapes and sexual assaults. Because people are going to say, oh, well, it's perfectly fine. We're protesting. Folks, all it takes is for one indiscriminate individual that's screws are so loose in their head and so stripped out that they see any of that protest material, it could send them into a nymphomaniac frenzy. And you know what's going to happen? Well, I was sexually assaulted. I wasn't in my right frame of mind, and I saw that, and I just went all haywire, like I was on 100 hits of ecstasy and all these flashing lights. And Super Mario did this. You know what? I don't want to hear it. They are setting themselves up for failure. Why?
But it's okay. It's okay, Jeremy, because Burn Me Sanders has come out and says that we just ought to legalize almost every drug.
Wow. Hey, I'm wondering if he's going to pick Gary Johnson as his running mate. Gary Johnson.
Oh,
boy.
Wow. But Jeremy, it just shows this cancerous doctrine of political correctness is posing a very real and significant threat to the United States. Common sense is being thrown out the window to appease these sniveling little brats. What they need to do is grow up. Really. Stop being offended. You're not as important as you think you are. Frankly, we sane adults are getting tired of your endless parade of stupidity. Shut up.
Well, it goes to the saying, and you mentioned World War II. Let's look at all the 18 to 25-year-olds during World War II. They were jumping out of planes, storming beaches that were and taking heavy fire, risking their lives to stop an evil entity from spreading throughout the world. Yet, college students now want a safe place because words are offensive. Really?
Yeah.
Really?
And to compare it with the groups that exist now, Black Lives Matters. Hey, I think that the 101st Airborne and the 82nd All-American Airborne were jumping out of perfectly good airplanes to say that all lives matter.
Absolutely. Now, if these nincompoops want a safe place because words offend them, I have the perfect place for you. It's a round room, heavily padded, and it comes with its own bag of M&Ms, and you can sort the M's from the W's in the corner.
No, we can't have that. It's unsafe. They might choke on the M&Ms or use them to kill each other. What we suggest is that you go to a hospital and have yourself put into a medically induced coma. Then nothing will offend you. I swear, nothing.
It's just it's to the point of, again, folks, if we don't stand up to this, it will consume us and destroy us all. It's the cancer, it's the plague that's going off. And again, these little incidents that pop up, the reason why I say it's like a cancer, political correctness, because all these incidents that pop up, they're like little polyps that are popping up, here and there. Something is setting them off. There's something that's triggering them. These malignant tumors, and everybody wants to just address each individual tumor. No, let's address the core of the problem. Let's get rid of the cancer. You burn the cancer out, you cut it out, do whatever you have to do to destroy it, and guess what? You won't see these little cancerous polyps and tumors pop up anywhere.
No, they'll be put in their place, and they'll have no place to go. And, that's how we have to be. We have to be proactive. We can no longer just believe in this doctrine of live and let live. And I think that a lot of conservatives have just lulled themselves into sleep with that. They thought that if they just left these people alone, maybe these people would let them live out their lives as they wanted to see fit. But we have seen that that is just not the case. Time and again, these people have become more and more radicalized. I think it's funny. They call it radical Islam. No, the radicals are these morons like Jessica Jin that we see plaguing and haunting all of our college campuses throughout this country, throwing out their bigoted, hateful, left-wing rhetoric and distracting everybody else. How can you have a conducive learning environment if you're disruptive?
She's a cockroach, is what she is.
Different meaning of the word cock yet again, but yes, she is a cockroach. But this is all just proof positive of the destructive influence that this regime and its policies have had on the United States. Independent thought has been replaced with lemming-like groupthink. These little deviants would follow each other off a cliff, plunging to their imminent death if they thought it were in vogue. Honestly, it's shocking to see how diametrically opposed our college campuses have become to critical thinking. And that brings me to another point. The semantics that we always reference in regards to the radical and extreme left, critical thinking is another term that they've hijacked. They've turned it into a weasel word. They really do think they're cute in the way that they have bastardized the language. They have created a code language all unto themselves, and it is really sick and stupid.
Critical thinking, let's see. In their idea of that, critical thinking skills is not thinking too hard because you might hurt yourself. Something along those lines?
Yeah. Well, or, it's like with the bar exam or the LSAT.
Mm-hmm.
All answers are right, but some answers are more right than others. What?
Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah. And you remember being, baffled by it, I'm sure, because it's not logical. It's totally illogical. It has no place in higher cognitive abilities or thinking.
It's really astounding. And, again, on these campuses, when you have professors, and I don't even like calling them professors. I really
Indoctrinators.
Don't. Indoctrinators is not quite a strong enough word for that either, in my opinion. But when these individuals...
Cult leaders, I guess we could go with that.
Marshall Applewhites?
Weathermen. We can go with Weathermen. Bill Ayers, isn't he a professor?
Yeah. The Weatherman Collective. There we go.
Yeah.
When they tell students, don't be afraid to say what's on your mind. You won't be ostracized or marked down so long as you could back up and give some kind of logical reasoning as to what you have to say. Well, the problem is when individuals like me would shoot down other classmates of mine and their so-called logic because my logic was superior, you know, it was kind of unsettling for a lot of people. Me, it just put a smile on my face because they couldn't prove me wrong in most cases. In fact, I don't think there was any case, and I'm not trying to sound arrogant or egotistical. It was just the fact that I didn't buy into this indoctrination crap.
Right.
You know, I spoke the truth, and again, the truth has no agenda. I took their agenda, turned it upside down, and spanked it like a little red-headed stepchild, and they got offended by it.
And of course they did, because they think that they know what's best. They think they have all the answers. And, you know, isn't it amazing that these are always the people that want to force us into government? They always say that the government is who could protect us, and that's why we have to sacrifice our fundamental and unalienable right to keep and bear arms. And with a story that's related to that, I mean, this is a real rich story. It comes from Peter Morris, Kevin Liptak, and Kristen Holmes with Communist News Network's Politburo. By that I mean the political part of CNN. Apparently, a Secret Service agent's gun and badge were stolen near the White House. Honestly, folks, you cannot make this stuff up.
How does that happen?
I don't know. I don't know. But there's more. Just like in one of those infomercials, Billy Mays is channeling me from the grave. Here it comes. This is the same Secret Service that has been mired with scandal since Obama took power. Remember, they had several incidents of procuring prostitutes in South America, and now an agent has his gun and badge stolen from him not far from the White House. You know, what this really demonstrates is that the government expects the people to sacrifice their fundamental and unalienable right to keep and bear firearms to what? Be protected by these guys who can't even prevent their sidearms and identification credentials from being stolen from right under their nose and right next to the place that they're supposed to be defending and protecting? I mean, how does that happen? It makes no sense whatsoever. None. But, oh well, so he has this stolen, and then they argue that only law enforcement and the military should be able to carry firearms like an AR-15 or an AK-47 or even a handgun. Spare me. It appears that these governmental actors are too distracted to secure their own firearms. Why should we submit to protection from a corrupt and incompetent government? Of course, you'll never hear this sort of story or opinion from the salivating mainstream media, now will you? No, you just absolutely won't.
You know, I don't understand how they can't secure their own property. This is criminal justice 101. For anybody that's going to be any kind of law enforcement officer, you are responsible and obligated to maintain possession of your firearm at all times.
Well, maybe he was looking for another prostitute.
Maybe he was wanting to hook up with Jessica Jin. Who knows? I just, you know, I don't know, maybe he was thinking, you know, well, at this point in time, I just don't feel like being locked and cocked and ready to go at a moment's notice should I have to respond. It's baffling. I don't understand how that can happen. Absolutely how it can happen. I own firearms. Every time I go out in public and I have my firearm with me, I know exactly where it is at all times. I'm not even a law enforcement officer. Why do I know these things? Because it's my obligation and duty. In fact, it's against the law if I do not maintain possession of that. I can lose my CPL license. I could even lose my firearms.
Yeah.
The sheer lack of responsibility and just the carelessness of this individual. How does it happen? This is baffling.
Yeah.
It really is.
It's absolutely beyond belief. Literally, what they are doing is showing that they are not equipped to handle this at all. And of course, you know, the reason that you'll never hear any of this like the opinions that Jeremy and I are espousing here for the likes of the mainstream media is because it would work against their twisted agenda. I mean, they want people to sacrifice their fundamental rights for a fleeting sense of security. What's laughable about it is that we see stuff like this all the time. It's like how the TSA has let bombs and guns through screening during safety drills. If that isn't the epitome of incompetence, then I don't know what it is. Again, folks, this is why the Founding Fathers ensured that the Second Amendment was included within the four corners of the Bill of Rights.
I figured it out. He had a come-to-Jesus moment and realized that he was engaging in microaggression.
Oh.
That's what it is, right
but
there.
You mean he had a coming to Jesus moment, right?
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Yeah. Because Chewy Gonzalez might get offended if you call him by the English phraseology.
Jesus.
Chewy! Yeah. You know, it just... The Founding Fathers inherently understood that people are the best suited to protect themselves. It's part of being a responsible citizen. But of course, the president wouldn't want you to think this way. It ties directly into his devious desire to fundamentally transform the United States. And I know it seems like I repeat that too often, but it is such an important point to harp upon that it bears repeating. Folks, if you truly love this country, you're not going to sit there and say that it needs to be fundamentally transformed. Hey, Jeremy, I have a feeling that if you walked up to your wife tonight and said, gee, honey, I love you, but I'm going to fundamentally transform you, she wouldn't take too kindly to that.
No, and I would have to probably replace a lot of cookware.
Yeah, I have a feeling that was what you would say.
You know, and she would actually say, okay, well, as long as I can fundamentally change you, and, you know, that would involve, you know, molten bronze and a splintery wooden spoon, and I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. But you know, it goes to show that you don't say that to your loved ones. Because, you know, there's going to be harmful repercussions. Well, we need to show these kind of repercussions to the sycophants that are wielding the reins of political power right now, because it is quite clear that they are not representing the best interests of the people, that they are not even representing the people. And again, that's why I'm going to bring up Pat Caddell's piece yet again here. It's the closest we've been to revolution in living memory. Two-quarters of the American population literally feel right now, as Jeremy and I speak to you, ladies and gentlemen, that the government is ruling without their consent. I'm actually surprised that the numbers are that low.
I thought I read that piece, and I thought it was, you know, yeah, 3/4 of it. And, you know, I've come to really like Pat Caddell. He's
a smart man, very smart.
Very smart guy. You know, he was actually, you know, I can remember a few years back when he was talking about, you know, when Obama was elected, he said, this country's gone to hell in a handbasket. I mean, he understood. He's a Democratic strategist. He even understands. Who better to understand the evils of one's party than an individual that is a member of that party? You know, I think Pat Caddell is, you know, a double agent, and I wouldn't have any doubt against it. He, you know, votes Democratic, but the thing is, he doesn't just vote for them because they have a D next to their name. He will not vote for somebody that does not have the best interests of this country in mind. And I know a lot of people would say, well, no Democrats do that. Well, actually,
they haven't in a long time. He's like the old Zell Miller strain.
And that's exactly where I was going with this. There are some individuals who are Democrats that do ring a bell, Zell Miller being one of them, especially when he spoke at
the 2004 presidential convention for the GOP.
correct. And when he was talking about our soldiers and our military, and people wanting to handcuff them and change the rules of engagement, he says, "What the hell are they supposed to use? Spit wads?"
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And if there is one thing we can all see with respect to the government, it's that common sense has no place within their ranks. And I think that's what Pat Caddell is seeing, because I think that's been taken to a whole exponentially different level with the Obama regime. I can honestly say that I have never seen the government act quite like it is now. Now, granted, I'm young, but even in my short time, I haven't seen the government act in quite such a flagrant and blatant manner as they have been now.
Well, sure. And I have 5 years on you, and I can attest for the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when Clinton was in office, and the first time I heard him speak or saw him speak on TV, I got chills up my spine. And I'd rather have chills up my spine listening to Clinton speak, because that sent off so many flags with me. And it's better to have a chill up your spine than a tingle down your leg.
It is funny when somebody asked dear sweet little
Chrissy Matthews.
Yes, Christy Matthews, about that. He told him to shut the hell up. I guess that tingling sensation is gone. Maybe it was fundamentally transformed.
Who knows?
Who knows? But, it's funny, because when you look at the way the government is now, like I said, common sense has no place within their ranks. They just march lockstep down the collectivist mentality. All the while, they increase their salaries and pensions at the expense of we the people. In a very real sense, I doubt that our founding fathers would even recognize this country as it is today. It has alienated all of their fundamental principles, and to me, that is a major tragedy. And I think you'd agree with me on that.
Well, if this would have went on during the time of our founding fathers, it would have been another Revolutionary War. I guarantee that.
Yeah.
I mean, and it wouldn't have even gotten this far. The first hint of this tyranny that's blanketed this country. This is the very thing that they fought against.
Mm-hmm.
This is the very thing that they declared independence from. This administration or regime, it's really no different than that of the Crown of England. They're just a little bit more.
Well, the way that I would say it's different is it's actually worse than the Crown of England was.
Well, worse into the fact that it's more shrouded. They're doing things a little bit more conniving,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you know what all of this shows is that they have developed a hierarchy with respect to victimhood, too. I love this. They are the ones that have masterminded victim mentality. But if you ever hear somebody on the left, they sit there and they try and say that, oh, well, what Randy and Jeremy are speaking of here, that just shows that they're playing into this conservative victimhood thing. I'm sorry. No, we're speaking about real effects and real deleterious consequences that have been wrought against this country like a whirlwind of havoc, destruction, and despotism. And then we see the detente wing of the gutless opposition party just collaborate with it. They don't stand up or try to prevent this. But, the nerve of these people who sit there and say that we can't have Christmas trees because it might offend Jihad Johnny, or Danny had 2 atheist daddies from the Gay Love Association. So, they call the victim card, but they say that we, telling the truth, we're victims. It's just projection. And I think they realize that people really are disgusted with the way that they do things and how they just try and attack and tear everything down that is good and decent about the country.
Well, allow me to break out my howitzer one more time and take aim at these enemies known as the political correctites.
Yeah.
I'm going to put them in their place right now. Number one, I will never be a victim of anything. Period. Because I understand that it is my obligation and my duty as an American citizen to protect myself. I will not succumb to, gun confiscation. You're trying to play that as a victim. No, that's not what it is. That's not victimhood. That's an individual standing up for what's right, railing against anti-constitutional measures.
Yeah, you are standing up against the deprivation of your God-given fundamental and unalienable right to keep and bear firearms. That's not being a victim. That's being proactive in your defense.
And where they fail to realize, the only time an individual becomes a victim is if they stand by and do nothing.
Right.
Those are the victims, and you know what? They create themselves, because if they don't have the wherewithal or the fortitude to stand up and do what's right and defend their own rights, then you know what? They don't deserve to have them.
Right. And you know what's funny is, like I was saying, they developed this hierarchy with respect to victimhood in this country. They believe that only Muslims and minorities can be victimized. What a crock of excrement. It's this sort of duplicity that really boils my blood. But in the wake of the San Bernardino attacks, Jeremy, I can honestly say that I believe that the American people are waking up to their shtick. We are on to them, and that should scare them senseless. But that requires that they have a brain. That requires that they have a mind and are capable of thinking for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we can clearly see and state for all of our cherished listening passengers and audience that these people don't have minds, that they don't have a cognitive ability to think for themselves.
Well, they're perfectly happy with going along to get along, or following the ideology of do as I say, not as I do mentality. And the reason is because the lives that they've built for themselves, and whatever perceived success that they have in their lives. Oh, I have a good house, I have a family, I've got a good job, and I have money in the bank, I'm secure, this and that. I don't want to go against the grain and rock the boat. Well, guess what, folks? I'm a very good swimmer. I have no problem capsizing that boat. I'm not going to stop at rocking it. I'll capsize it. And you know what? That's what needs to be done. That's called tough love. Individuals that are in that boat with me, if they don't want to rock the boat, or they get scared because the boat is rocking and they know it's going to tip over, if they're scared about that, I'll stop doing what I'm doing and I'll throw them out of the boat myself.
Yeah. But it's amazing. It seems as though the cancerous doctrine of political correctness has really metastasized during this regime. I can say that it's worse than it was when I was in college, and it was pretty bad then, 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, it's shocking, because you see, they want to ban white Christmas because it has the word white in it. They want to, how can you claim to be for tolerance and yet say that anyone who's white should be punished?
Well, you know what? Hey, let's ban Black Friday, because Black Friday is the first shopping day for the holiday season.
Yeah.
Let's ban Black Friday.
Yeah.
You can't do that. You're just banning it because it has the word black in it, and that's racist.
Well,
really?
White snow.
White snow.
White Christmas. I mean, sorry, folks.
Yeah. You want to play?
God made Snow White. Why don't you take it up with him?
Right. And furthermore, if you have a problem with the word white being attached to snow, why don't you contact Walt Disney World and tell them to, stone Snow White to death by way of the Seven Dwarfs, okay?
The Seven Dwarfs. Why does that sound like 7 Democrat congressmen? It just does.
Sleepy, lazy, what?
Sleepy, lazy, klepto. Yeah, we can go down the list.
Come on, folks, let's be serious about this. Again, it's the semantics.
Yeah, don't let dwarfs into your house.
Yeah, it's the semantics that Randy brought up, it's okay for them to do one thing, but you can't turn it around on them because it's offensive. Well, again, you don't have the right to not be offended. That is the beautiful thing of the First Amendment. And people that truly understand what it means to exercise their First Amendment, it means saying whatever you want to say so long as you're willing to accept the responsibility and the consequences for doing so. These troglodytes, they go, I know my First Amendment rights and I have the freedom of speech and this and that, and you can't do anything to me. Yeah? Well, guess what? You're wrong. Because your rights are not what you say they are.
Yeah.
They don't want to take responsibility. In fact, they're the ones that want to create more rights and then use them to infringe upon the legitimate rights of individuals and then force those individuals to suffer the consequences. Hence, Black Lives Matter, CARE, LGBT, NAMBLA.
LGBT STFU.
Yes. PMSNBC, so on and so forth. It's just...
Yeah. Well, here's a rather humorous story coming from Newsmax. Apparently, Lindsey Graham told Communist News Network, CNN, that he regrets not being a better candidate. And he was saying this as he finally drops out of the running for the highest office in the land. Let us all take a moment of silence for Lindsey Graham. Okay, that was a moment enough. Anyway, really, he's saying that he regrets not being a better candidate. That's the only thing he regrets. Of all the things to regret, that's what you regret? Lindsey, you should regret your appalling stance on so-called immigration reform. Your wholehearted endorsement of amnesty reflects the sort of defective thinking that has exposed Americans to exponentially increased danger. Your love of big government has alienated you from the party of whom you vied to be the candidate for the highest office of the land, and you were wholeheartedly rejected. In other words, you have alienated yourself from the base. No wonder you couldn't get traction, you dolt. Oh, and another thing. If you truly regret being such a horrible candidate, you should do more than your token gesture of dropping out of the race. Do us all a favor and drop out of politics altogether. Your failed leadership is embarrassing, and you should be ashamed of yourself. However, to feel a sense of shame, you must first have a moral compass. And for the life of me, I just don't see you as having a moral compass. Take your playthings and go home, Lindsey. Leave leadership up to the adults.
Now, I know Lindsey Graham is rated by several Second Amendment advocacy groups as being, A+ or A rating as far as supporting the Second Amendment. Well, good for him, but I'm going to try and not so much stretch it, but maybe put a little different perspective on that. I think it's a sham. I don't think he truly respects the Second Amendment because he doesn't truly respect the Constitution as a whole. If he's all for illegal aliens coming in and this amnesty, ex post facto laws, these are the things that are causing incidents to happen with these illegal aliens, to where it's prompting people to want to create more gun legislation. He is supporting the catalyst that is prompting anti-Second Amendment legislation. He's doing it by proxy. I don't think he truly cares about the Second Amendment. If he did, he would understand that amnesty is part of the problem on why they want to perpetuate all these anti-Second Amendment bills and whatever else.
Right.
He should just stop.
Yeah.
Like you said, just leave. In fact, don't go away, man. Just go away. Don't be regretful. Just suck it up, Buttercup. Pack your bags and go.
Yeah. And, Gramnesty went on to say that despite having the regret of being a rather terrible candidate, and I'll admit he was a terrible candidate,
sure,
he holds no regrets about running. Why? Do you really enjoy wasting money that much? You see, this once again clearly demonstrates that people like Lindsey Graham-ass are totally detached from reality. How disgusting he is. He represents everything that is wrong with the gutless opposition party. The next one who should join Mr. Graham Nasty is tinfoil hat wearing Rand Paul. We need to narrow the field down to serious candidates. And as far as we're concerned here at the Wright Flyer, there's only one real, serious candidate, Texas Senator Ted Cruz. When we are in a chaotic world, like that which greets us every morning, we need a principled leader who is passionate about adhering to the fundamental principles contained within our shared Constitution. The only candidate who satisfies this requirement is none other than Ted Cruz. Of course, you won't hear this from the detente wing of the gutless opposition party. They're in free fall right now. El Jefe Jebe's campaign has gone absolutely nowhere. Marxist Rubio is falling flat too. His love of amnesty and his dishonest attacks against Ted Cruz have left many in the base with an unpleasant taste in their mouth.
Actually, El Jefe is actually nudged up a little bit. He got the 0.1% of voters and supporters from Lindsey Graham-nasty. So he was able to secure that. Way to go. Bravo, El Jefe. You're doing good there, bud.
Yeah. Inspirational.
Yeah, and I have to go back to Graham-nasty for a second. When he made the statement that the only regret I have was that I wasn't a better candidate, but I have no regrets in running. Well, how does that work? Because if you regret not being a better candidate, that should automatically translate into you regret ever running to begin with.
Yeah.
And again, this is the semantics and the double entendre and double meaning of these slogans and phrases and words of political correctness. He's trying to be nice on the front of things. Well, I just want to say I have no regrets in running. Wrong. Okay. Here's the thing, Lindsey Forrest Gump Graham-nasty. You should run, not as a candidate, not in any political field, but I don't know, just run. Far, far away, and don't stop running. Keep running, and don't look back.
Hey, speaking of Graham's support of amnesty, Fox News has reported that some 10,000 illegal alien children have arrived at a Rockwall County, Texas shelter in this last month alone. They point out that this is a decrease from the 34,000 who arrived during 2014, but you see, here again is this kind of duplicitous thing you see with the mainstream media. They use 10,000 in 2 months to show a decrease in numbers and compare it to a full year.
How does that work?
Not well.
Common Core. That's it. Common Core.
It's gotta be.
Common Core politics. There we go.
Yeah. And even if, let's say, it were only 10,000 for the entire year of 2015, which we know is not the case, it's still unacceptable. It would still be an unacceptable number. Why are the taxpayers being forced to pay for this invasion? These people are not citizens and therefore have not availed themselves of our Constitution and our fundamental and unalienable rights. They have no place being here. If they want to enter this country, then they should go through our well-established immigration system legally. It's really that simple. Yet those bleeding hearts on the radical left and within the detente wing of the gutless opposition party are obfuscating this issue. They're attempting to play on people's emotions, and I, for one, am sick and tired of it.
Well, the established laws are offensive to them.
Oh.
That's why they want to reform them.
Of course.
Well, speaking of the term reform, we can go to look at reformatory schools, because that's where reform started.
Yeah.
It was done in the sense of the legal system, criminal justice system, to correct individuals who were engaged in wrongdoing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the thing is, some of those individuals could not be reformed. They were what was deemed as incorrigible. They could not be taught anything different. They are one-track minded, single-celled organisms that are parasitic on this country, such as the Democratic voting base. People like Jessica Ginn, individuals like the Marshall Applewhites of the world that all want to collude with each other and march lockstep with each other and say, well, that's offensive, let's just, you know what, I don't care if it's offensive or not.
Their offensiveness is offensive.
Their simple existence is offensive.
Yeah. Stop stealing my air.
Right.
Yeah. And, I'm sure that some feckless and sniveling little leftist would point the finger at both you and me right now, Jeremy, and claim that we are heartless radicals. So what?
So?
I'm sick and tired of this regime's policies harming our country. I'm tired of the hand-wringing over people who don't deserve it. We should return to enforcing our Constitution and the laws that have been made in pursuance thereof. Not attempting to replace decent American citizens with so-called refugees.
Yeah, and here's the thing: these individuals that want to point the finger at us and say, "Well, you're heartless and you're radical and you're insensitive." I'll tell you what: when I start to care, let me know and I'll stop.
Yeah. And it just goes to show that these people just want to obfuscate the truth, to push us further away from the Constitution, and they're all for breaking our laws. And here's something that ought to be asked: is there isn't a war going on in South America, right? So why are we calling these people refugees? What are they refugees from? If they have a problem with their country, why don't they do what we did 200 years ago and, I don't know, correct the problem?
Mm-hmm. Well, calling them refugees would be like calling individuals that live in one city and move out of the city because of the corrupt politics and they move to another city. Would they, by that logic, they would be considered to be refugees?
Everybody moving out of Chicago would be, yeah.
Would they not? Or Flint, Michigan, Detroit, Los Angeles? I mean, really. And with these sanctuary cities, here's how you solve the problem with the sanctuary cities. It has to be done by the people. All the people have to do is say, you know what? State government and legislature, if you don't revoke the charters for those cities that are sanctuary cities, we're going to remove you from office. We will recall you. We will vote you out. We will replace you by any means necessary if you refuse to do this, because allowing those cities to still exist is in violation of federal law.
Yeah. Hey, well, here's the thought. Why not just have the governors of the state revoke the city charters? It's within their authority to do so.
Absolutely. And if the governors refuse, well, then
recall them. Get rid of them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, here's a bit of good news from Fox, and of course they had this tucked away near the bottom of their page. An armed neighbor in Houston stopped some burglar from stealing from his 83-year-old neighbors. I mean, I swear, these thugs, much like the ones that pushed down that blind bell ringer for the Salvation Army, were trying to steal Christmas presents from an 83-year-old's house. This is the sort of compassion that should be celebrated. This man, this armed neighbor, protecting his neighbor's property. It also demonstrates why our Second Amendment right is absolutely critical. We protect ourselves and keep our society orderly through responsibly exercising our fundamental and unalienable right to keep and bear firearms. I must applaud this Houston, Texas resident for doing the right thing. I'm sure that the Department of Justice would love to find a way to prosecute him. After all, this regime wants us to believe that firearms represent a public health issue. You know what? If it is a public health issue, then our medical staff here at the Wright Flyer prescribes that more people exercise their Second Amendment right. It will ensure that the country is a safer place, and it will stop social deviants from wreaking havoc. Again, common sense can show the way. And our founding fathers were brilliant in their understanding of how a free and open society is meant to function.
You know, I read somewhere earlier, and I'm trying to find the article here. It was in a town called Warrior, and I can't remember if it's Warrior, Alabama, or Warrior, Louisiana. A little town called Warrior, to where there was an attempted robbery, again, another robbery in progress, and there was a vehicle actually stopped, and it was a family that was traveling down the road and saw this. The family got out. Every single family member in that vehicle of legal age was armed.
Yeah.
And they stopped the robbery. They intervened.
That's awesome.
Now, again, we can't make this up, but that is one of the best feel-good stories of the day. You know, getting in touch with their feelings. It makes me feel good. It is almost orgasmic for me when I see individuals like that step up and do the right thing, stop these social deviants in everything that they're doing, and they do it in a justifiable manner.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's, you know, it puts a smile on my face.
Yeah.
That lasts kind of a while, and it's almost like I have a glowing effect from reading stories like this.
Yeah.
This is what our country is all about. This encompasses individualism, the defense of our rights and freedoms, charity, so on and so forth. And a lot of people think charity is just giving. You know what that armed family did while driving down the street, and when they intervened?
They risked their own safety, but to ensure that order was maintained.
Right. They gave time out of their lives to put themselves in harm's way to ensure the safety of another individual and to secure that individual's property. If that's not charitable, folks, I don't know what is.
Oh, yeah. Oh, pardon. You know, I want to bring up one last issue before we start closing up here, and I know this is a little bit of a shorter episode, but it is the holiday season, and we have a lot of drinking to do.
Eggnog.
Yes, but
Hognog.
Hognog, yeah. You know, in the wake of that terrorist attack in San Bernardino, California, it's not just our fundamental and unalienable right to keep and bear firearms that the government wants to go after. They also want to prevent us from being able to encrypt things on our computers and smartphones. You know, there's really an important reason why we have the encryption option. It ensures that hackers cannot get sensitive personal information. Of course, that means nothing to the government.
It's called the Fourth Amendment.
Oh, yeah, I know. We're coming up to that. But, you know, dubious Marxist Rubio is sitting there saying that we shouldn't have that. It makes it too easy on the terrorists. The Marco Rubio.
You know, me and Lindsey Graham are two peas in a pod.
Yeah. You know, you guys shouldn't be making fun of my metrosexual ways. I'm just out to protect the country, and clearly Ted Cruz has made things terrible.
By upholding the Constitution.
Oh, absolutely. The Constitution is outdated when it comes to stopping terrorists, and it also might stop, you know, all of those little immigration hood rats that I want to come, you know, those undocumented dreamers. And I just said today that, okay, after 10 years, we should just let them stay in the country and give them a path to legality.
Somebody hand me another tequila, 'cause clearly I am not inebriated enough to keep speaking.
Oh, so let's let them stay here, even though they're already here illegally. Here's an idea. Going by that logic, let's just let every single escaped felon that escapes from prison or custody just stay on the lam. Just, hey, they escaped? Yeah, just let them. Let's just give them amnesty too. It, really? Really? Instead of drinking another shot of tequila, what he needs to do is go dig up a bunch of agave plants and just insert them.
Pick your orifice, folks. Pick your orifice. The wheel of orifice. Gosh. Yeah, it goes to show that he really shouldn't be trying to vie for the office of president. He's not qualified.
No. He, along with Lindsey Graham, now Graham's already dropped up, but they, again, go away. You're starting to damage my calm. That's one of my favorite lines from a great movie and television show. You're annoying. It's kind of like, the individual that comes up to you and starts talking to you about things that you know nothing about going on in their life. You really don't want to know because, there's nothing you can do to help them. But they seem to think that you can, but they just want the attention. He's what's known as an attention whore.
Yeah.
Okay? That's what Rubio is. He wants to be in the limelight, probably because, I don't know, as a child growing up, he was fed by a slingshot 10 feet away. Even the pork chop bone tied around his neck, it wasn't even enough to get the dog to play with him. I don't know what his issue is. Oh, wait, yes, I do. He's a communist Marxist.
Yeah, he's Marxist Rubio. That's exactly what he is. And, it just goes to show that the detente wing of the gutless opposition party is diametrically opposed to everything that is good and decent about this country. They are no different than the Democrats. They're just as destructive as ISIS, and this is why we cannot entrust them with the reins of political power here in the United States of America. Because if we let them go in this country, they would do everything in their power to further subvert the Constitution, to further tear this country apart. And now, with that said, it is time to begin our descent. I'm going to send the flight attendant back for one last round of alcohol and eggnog, and then we will actually bring this down, folks, and we want to wish you a Merry Christmas. As always, I'm your Captain, Randy Wright, who is joined by my first officer, Jeremy Grapington. Merry Christmas, everybody. We will see you the next time we fly you over the friendly airwaves, leaving you with an indelible yet pure sense of enlightenment, as we always do. Thank you. Look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.